Welcome into TD Garden. Josue Pavone here alongside Clevis Murray, where the Celtics just dropped the game to the Washington Wizards, 111 to 103. You know, Clevis, first of all, I gotta say Merry Christmas.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
What do you think of the hat? You know what? I know what you think of the hat because you were loving it from the second I walked in. And first of all, before we get started here, this wasn't planned. All right, I came in. He had the green. I had the red. I mean, it was just meant to be.
You're looking very festive. Okay.
I mean, it worked out. We both are. We're killing it right now on camera. I mean,
it
it worked out for us, but unfortunately, it didn't work out for the Celtics. I mean, that fourth quarter, the execution sort of fell apart towards the end of that fourth quarter. 12-0 run from the Wizards, game-defining run. Brad Stevens talked about the fact that he didn't see his guys close out on John Wall and Bradley Beal as well as he expected them to in that fourth quarter, and that certainly changed the impact of the game as the Wizards were able to run away with this one. The Celtics did manage to pull it to a 5-point game, but it was offensive rebounding by the Washington Wizards that ultimately decided the fate today at TD Garden.
Yeah, and you just watched the game itself. You know, I seen a stat today where the Celtics didn't have a defensive rebound for the last 6 minutes of the game.
Yes,
that's kind of unheard of because it's easier to get a defensive rebound than an offensive rebound. Seeming to tell me not one person can get it. And then as we watched the game, you seen that the Wizards were clearly out hustling them, getting second chance points, rebounds. In the last minute of the game, it was a 5-point game after Terry Rozier's three.
Yep, Celtics 1 minute left, 5-point game. Right.
Needed one stop. Wizards missed the shot, but they don't get the rebound. Celtics don't get the rebound.
Right.
And that's how they lose their first ever Christmas home game.
Yeah, but, you know, Kyrie Irving certainly did what he usually does. Jason Tatum, I mean, they both reached 20 points today in this game. But I felt like when it came down to Beal and Wall, I mean, this is the team that we've seen in last year's playoffs. They can put a run together as fast as any other team in the NBA, and that was the case today with that 12-0 run. I mean, it was almost reminiscent of what we saw in the playoffs when they came out of that huge drought.
27-0 run or something
in
like
Game 4 against the Celtics. You know, it was sort of reminiscent of that. Not as bad, but just as effective.
Yeah, what was the worst is when the Wizards went kind of small with Morris at the center, and you had Oubre at the 4, and Scott Brooks acknowledged that that's kind of like their death lineup in a way. He didn't want to fully admit it, but he kind of hinted at it, where they were just running, they were spacing the floor, they were creating, and gave credit to both Morris and Oubre for picking up John Wall and Bradley Beal. Yeah,
Brad Stevens, of course, expressed his frustration with how his team performed in that second half. I happened to ask Kyrie Irving if this was one of the most frustrating games of the season, and he didn't like the question, it seemed like. I mean, he just didn't think that this is one of those games that he looked at as one of the most frustrating games of the season. What's your take on it? Do you think this is one of the most frustrating games? Because there's a difference between the worst losses. Obviously, the Celtics have been blown out more than once this season, but I feel like when it comes to the most frustrating losses, I think this is right up there so far. Loss number 10 in the early season.
Yeah, I'll put it up there because you're just so close to winning. All you need is basically, if they have at least maybe 5 more rebounds, defensive rebounds, they might pull it out. They might win the game, but you keep losing those small, close possessions and just cost you a game that you know you easily could have won towards the end.
You know what? The schedule doesn't get any tougher. I feel like a broken record saying this, but I mean, we got another back-to-back coming up this week. Starts off in Charlotte, ends up here against the Houston Rockets, a team with the best record in the NBA. Clevis, are you any bit concerned about the Celtics heading into this tough stretch? Could we see a pattern here in terms of them dropping losses here, or do you think that they can bounce back in Charlotte and put up a competitive game against the Rockets on Thursday?
I definitely think they can bounce back in Charlotte. Charlotte's been playing well. Dwight Howard's been playing like he's back in Orlando. Kemba is dealing with shoulder injuries, but I definitely think they can bounce back in Charlotte. The biggest game will probably be Thursday against Houston, where you have James Harden, Chris Paul, they're playing lights out right now. MVP candidate, the inflated stats right there. So how can they play against a team that's offensively good against Celtics who rely super heavily on their defense?
It's going to be interesting to see how things pan out. That's going to do it for us for TD Garden. I am Josue Pavone. He is Clevis Murray. This has been the Garden Report for CLNS Media and Celtics Blog.